I'm Dan Stone, the past president of the Jewish Heritage Center and tonight's MC. On behalf of the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada, I'd like to acknowledge that the province of Manitoba is located on the territories of Treaties 1 through 5 and on the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. We respect and honor the treaties and agreements that were made on these lands that we share, and we remain committed to strengthening our relationships with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. The Jewish Heritage Center, your host tonight, for those of you who don't know us, aims to document, preserve, and share information on the culture and historical formation of the Jewish communities in Western Canada. The center also serves as an advocate of anti-racism and education on the Holocaust and anti-Semitism. Welcome for this evening of memories of Roz Usiskin, family, community, and politics. We are all deeply moved by the tragic events unfolding in Israel and on its borders, but let us put them aside for a short time to pay our respects and learn about Roz Usiskin. This is not the first commemorative event. Last November, I stood with many of you I know in the Hebrew Sick Benefit Cemetery under light snow, as I recall, as she was buried and family members spoke. I also attended, although by Zoom, the gathering at Winnipeg Beach in the summer where memories were shared. Tonight's gathering, like those, is general, but it also focuses on Roz's contributions to the Jewish Heritage Center and its predecessor, the Jewish Historical Society. She was a longtime board member of the Jewish Historical Society of Western Canada and its last president. Then, as first president of the Jewish Heritage Center, she guided the Historical Society's integration with two newly created institutions, the Holocaust Education Center and the Jewish Museum. That also gave her the responsibility of moving the office from its home opposite the YMHA on Hargrave Street to the Asper Jewish Community Campus, and creating the archive from the rich trove of materials that had been collected by the Historical Society and stored with the Provincial Archive of Manitoba. Beyond that, Roz made many important contributions to the study of Jewish history in Manitoba with articles and edited works that continue to be cited by today's scholars. And she was a devoted Yiddishist who translated literary works and historical documents so others could see the riches of Jewish culture. I won't go on. There's too much to say about her community activities, about her activities in the United Jewish People's Order, and much else. And there are others who can say it much better than I. Some are on the program that you saw when you came in. Others are in the audience. I hope you will understand when I say that tonight's program will be limited to 90 minutes before we adjourn to the Caney Foyer, where we continue to share our memories. Now, to hear more of Roz's contributions, let us turn to those who knew her best. Our first guest will be a surprising one, the voice of Roz herself. Professor Nolan Riley is making his way up here, is the person who will bring Roz's voice to this meeting. Nolan is co-founder and former director of the Oral History Center at the University of Winnipeg, where he also taught in the history department. The Oral History Center is internationally recognized for its excellence in the recording, archiving, and presentation of academic and community oral histories. The Jewish Heritage Center has benefited from advice and technical assistance in all its recent oral history collections. Nolan met Roz in 1978 when he began his teaching career at the University of Winnipeg. They soon became good friends, as did their families. Over the years, Roz and Nolan collaborated on numerous professional and community projects, including, most recently, the Roz Usiskin Oral History Project, about which you will now hear.
Thank you, Dan. Well, I'm not sure whether it's the new hearing aids that I have, the bifocals that mean I can't see the paper if I put it down here, or the fact that I left quickly and forgot to put a belt on. So this is a difficult beginning. So I'm very happy to be here. I recognize many of your faces, and it's nice to be here. I think I better just start. Roz and I began collaborating on the Roz Usiskin Oral History Project in 2018. We held regular research meetings over the next 4 years, and at the time of Roz's passing, our collaboration was ongoing. Over this time, we recorded over 7 hours of Roz's memories and reflections on her life. Reflections on their life. These recordings, together with several hundred pages of interview transcripts, a large collection of photographs selected by Roz, and other documents associated with the project, are now permanently archived at the Oral History Center at the University of Winnipeg. The Oral History Center recently completed processing this material and is pleased to announce that Roz's collection is now available online. It is an open access collection at Roz's request. The postcards, which I distributed, and if you didn't get one, you can certainly see me afterwards, here tonight provide a direct link to the Roz Usiskin Oral History Collection, and the audio presentation you're about to hear is also available there. So all of those aspects that I mentioned, the transcripts, the actual interviews, the photographs are all available in that collection, and you can access it online. Roz undertook this oral history project to create a lasting record of her life for her family and future generations. She was also concerned to leave for posterity a record of her commitment to a secular, politically progressive Jewish tradition rooted in Yiddish culture and politics. I encourage Roz to narrate or tell her story or her history in whatever way or order she wished. Roz was, as many of you know, by inclination and professional training, a social historian. Therefore, it's not surprising to find that the interviews follow generally a chronological pattern, beginning with her early life in Winnipeg and continuing through until the late 1990s and a little bit into the new century. The interviews Roz and I were planning at the time of her death were intended to carry this through until today. I regret that Roz and I were unable to complete her story. However, there is much to learn about Roz's life in the interviews that we were fortunate enough to complete. I encourage you to explore this legacy Roz left for us in her oral history project. And again, that this will take you directly there. And what you will hear tonight, about 34 minutes you'll hear tonight, it's just an introduction. All the themes that she talks about in tonight you will be able to find in greater depth in the interviews. The audio story or video created for tonight's commemoration and to which you're about to listen is drawn from audio clips chosen from across the entire collection of my interviews with Roz. It begins with her description of her childhood and teenage years, in which she describes the influences leading her towards that lifelong commitment to her family and to a secular and what she often called radical Jewish cultural tradition, associated fundamentally with her democratic socialist politics. Tonight's presentation ultimately concludes with Roz describing the challenges, her decision to return to high school and then enroll in university in her late 30s and early 40s. The challenges that it created for her family especially. Her home life had to be substantially reorganized, a change which Larry Usiskin, Roz's husband, fully embraced. On the other hand, Roz also describes this as an exhilarating time in her life. In her University of Winnipeg courses and her discussions with students and faculty, Roz encountered challenges to those cultural and political perspectives she had acquired in her youth. The feminist movement was especially important in this regard, as was the challenge for her to adopt a more what is often referred to as personal or subjective politics. Now, just before we actually begin, I'd like to take a moment and thank Kimberly Moore and at the back and Kent Davies from the Oral History Center. They are friends and colleagues of mine at the Oral History Center. Their enthusiastic contributions of their knowledge, their expertise, and their time to this project were absolutely crucial to its success, and I thank them. Now, with a brief comment on what you're about to hear and see, the emphasis tonight is on Roz's voice. It's on listening to Roz, and it's on listening to her tell us her story as she saw it and understood it and wanted to tell it. The audio you will hear is definitely of a professional quality. However, subtitles are provided for those who wish to follow along in this manner. And finally, please note at several points in the presentation, photographs have been inserted to signal that there's a shift coming in Roz's narratives. She's changing subjects. In one other instance, there is an extended pause that indicates such a shift. So I wanted to alert you that these changes come about because we do not interrupt her narrative. The presentation is about 35 minutes long. So now it's time to listen to Roz. Okay?
Thank you, Nolan, for bringing Roz's voice to us and raising such interesting subjects that had never been part of my conversations with her, and I'm so happy to learn about them. And thank you, Kim and Kent, for your very valuable contribution to this project. This gives us a short taste of the 7 hours of material that I think many of us will spend some time with to learn far more about her life and about things that even her best friends possibly might know, and those of us who knew her much more casually certainly don't know. Now, Roz generously arranged to contribute her papers to the Jewish Heritage Center archive, as she had helped arrange the contribution of the United Jewish People Order papers to the archives of the Jewish Heritage Center. She wanted them to be in Winnipeg, but copies, of course, to the national organization. Now, if Michael, Arnie, and Lynn will come up, they will make a presentation of, a symbolic presentation of the 6, or is it 7 boxes of material that she is contributing. And Sharon, will you join them? Once you get up here, I will introduce them. Well, I'll start now. First across, Michael is the eldest son. He currently works as co-owner with his brother Arnold at Warkhoff Saphir Leather Limited. Before this, he was involved in public access television in all aspects of camera, editing, and production. Previously had a short-term job, just like his mother, with the University of Winnipeg as a sociology lecturer. Arnie, or Arnold, Usiskin is the middle son. Since 1998, he's been co-owner of the Warkhoff Saphir Leather Limited with brother Michael. Previously, he was employed by CBC for 17 years, and before that, by both Rogers Cable in Toronto and Videon Cable here in Winnipeg. Arnie likes to say that he went from show business to shoe business. And Len is the youngest son. He retired at the end of June as executive director of Quint Development Corporation, a not-for-profit community economic development organization in Saskatoon's inner city that works in low-income neighborhoods with affordable housing, employment, and social enterprises. Although retired, Len remains active in the community, working on issues of social and economic justice. Sharon's hiding behind me. Receiving tonight's presentation on behalf of the Jewish Heritage Center Archives will be Sharon Graham. Sharon works as community planning and allocations lead for the Jewish Federation of Winnipeg and serves as the volunteer president of the Winnipeg section of the National Council of Jewish Women Canada. She is an historian whose doctoral dissertation and publications concentrate on Winnipeg Jewish history, especially the Jewish orphanage. In preparing her scholarly work, she was, as she put it to me, lucky enough not only to cite Roz's excellent historical research, but also to meet Roz and chat with her about local Jewish history. Sharon is a member of the Archives Committee of the Jewish Heritage Center. At one point in her development, she was the general manager of the Jewish Heritage Center and did a wonderful job. Now I'll turn this over to the Usiskins and to Sharon. Let's make this a little more visible. This is the symbolic presentation of a small portion of the very generous presentation that we're about to receive.
I'm sorry, I have a little bit of a cold, so my voice isn't very effective right now. So I'm just going to read a short part of what we have to say. We want to thank the Jewish Heritage Center for organizing this tribute to our mother, Roz Usiskin. Mom was always insisting that accomplishments and milestones were celebrated, and that we would all agree that she is so worthy of this tribute. We would also like to thank Nolan Riley for his recorded interviews and the presentation tonight. It was great to hear her voice again.
So this afternoon, when we were kind of looking through some of the boxes, one of the first pieces of paper that came out was this letter, but the headline was, from the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada, and it was dated October 31st, 2005, and it starts out saying, "Dear Roz, the board of the Jewish Heritage Center was very unhappy when your letter of resignation was read. No one wanted to accept it, but realized that as you were intending to resign in December, anyways, they reluctantly accepted it. So, and they go on to say, your name has always been synonymous with the Jewish Historical Society and now the Jewish Heritage Center from its inception, and your dedication and hard work shows in every aspect of the organization. And then they go on to thank her, but I thought it was very appropriate that this is one piece of paper that came out this afternoon. So I was going to just talk a little bit about our mother, but she was a very important person to many people in many people's lives. She was a friend and mentor to us all, and a shining example of integrity and principle and kindness. And as we could tell from the interviews, she had a very remarkable and engaged life, shaped in her youth by growing up in the Depression and surrounded by a radical left-wing family members who were writers and activists, and it shaped her politics, and she always thought critically and had endless curiosity about virtually everything. She loved to read and always wanted to debate ideas and discuss the pressing issues of the day. And she had a very interesting life. She went through, was involved in a great many organizations and initiatives, and the list goes on and on. But in terms of the family, she was a community builder within the family too. Maintaining close family connections was extremely important, and she was the matriarch of both the Wolodarski and Usiskin families. She ensured that families and friends came together for every possible milestone or mitzvah. She loved to host gatherings and suppers in her home and at her Winnipeg Beach cottage. And food, of course, was an essential part of all these meetings. And when I was listening to the transcripts on my mom's computer when we were taking part down the apartment, and of course the start of all these interviews, which isn't on here, was her offering Nolan food and tea, because we have to eat and before we can start the business, eh? So so we were very inspired by her enthusiasm for life and her curiosity and intellect. And Mom was still very engaged in the community work, and we know there are a number of unfinished projects that she was working on. But she planted a lot of seeds, and the legacy will be that her work for peace and justice will carry on to make a better world. Mike?
Earlier today, we were going through some of the boxes of the stuff that was marked for archives, and I was just noticing how meticulous she was in keeping notes, and everything was labeled properly, and she was constantly analyzing things and writing down all her thoughts. So it was quite a revelation to see the extent to which she worked on these projects. But tonight we would like to share that her estate will be making donations to 4 organizations that we're close to her heart. This is the UJPO, United Jewish People's Order in the Winnipeg branch, the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada, Judaic Studies Department at the University of Manitoba, and the Oral History Center at the University of Winnipeg. Also, the family would like to announce that we are giving our mother's papers and archival material to the archives of the Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada. These include such articles and speeches, presentations, meeting minutes, recorded music, speeches, stories, and the original Joseph Wolodarski and Pauline Freed letters. So we want to give this over to you now, and This is one of at least 7 more boxes, so it'll be quite the job.
It looks like a cardboard box, but it's actually full of treasures. Thank you very much. On behalf of the Jewish Heritage Center's Archives Committee, we're very happy to accept this donation from one of the founders of the archives and of the Jewish Historical Society. Roz was a wonderful person, and I did get to meet her, but I also got to rely on the work that she wrote as a historian, her work on the social history of the radical Jews, of the North End Jews, of Jewish women. They were all very important, and I'm sure that these donated materials will be useful to scholars and to students for many years to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Arnie. Thank you, Lynn. And especially, thank you, Roz. Our last speaker for tonight will be Esther Reiter. Esther met Roz shortly after coming to Winnipeg with her family in 1968, and they quickly became friends, sharing many personal and political values. Esther's scholarly work reflects that friendship. Roz and Esther co-authored a paper on the history of the United Jewish People's Order that they presented to the Association of Canadian Jewish Studies at the Learned Societies. A solo book called A Future Without Hate or Need, The Promise of the Jewish Left in Canada, examines a subject that Roz held dear. Esther is Professor Emerita, York University, and serves on the National Board of the United Jewish People's Order.
You know, when I got my first job at the University of Winnipeg, in the very, very first meeting I went to, I was so thrilled to be a professor and everything. What they were doing, they were giving a gold medal out to their best student. This was in 1973, and you know what? It was Roz. And I had known her from Voice of Women, when I first came. Well, Yiddishkeit and social justice meant a lot to Roz. She devoted a lot of her very formidable energies to the United Jewish People's Order. Because, this was the organization that really expressed her ideals, and that went pretty deep. We were soulmates on these questions. Roz's involvement with the UJPO, and you heard a little bit about that from the interviews with Nolan, began very soon after the Winnipeg UJPO became when the national organization was formed in 1945. She was still a teenager, and it's also actually where she met Larry. The roots of the secular left organization start a lot earlier than that. The revolutionary Marxists founded the Abitiring in Winnipeg, you know when? Back in 1907. Some of you guys here may even remember the Freiheit Temple on Pritchard. That was a little before my time, which they bought back in 1918. At the time, the Abitiring, the Workmen's Circle, included everybody. Well, almost everybody. There was one criterion. You had to object to the capitalist system. But it included social democrats, syndicalists, territorialists, labor Zionists. How do I know about all this history? Of course, from Roz. She wrote about it in her still unpublished master's thesis on the early Winnipeg Jewish community. And you know what? You can look for it and find it here, and her master's thesis here in the archives in this very building. Now, it's a unity of the left that did not last very long. But you know what? I believe the idea of working together was very dear to Roz, not only in what she wrote, but in how she lived. A little bit more of that later. The United Jewish People's Order, and you heard a little bit about that, was in a very difficult position. Well, to many people in the Orthodox community, anybody still secular was dismissed. Oh, apokursim, what do you want? We're renegades, we're not even really Jews. And to lots of others, we could just be dismissed as Reds. We're all agents of the Kremlin. And any criticism of the government of Israel, of course, made us self-haters, right? Okay, never mind the incredible battles of our members to unionize workplaces, including people in Roz's family. Forget about the choirs singing Yiddish songs, the dancers, the plays. There's even a picture, if you look out there on the far left, of Roz in Par Kochba. I think she said she was a slave. Oh, the Lehenkaisen, the reading circles, the shulas, the mandolin circle, the mandolin orchestras. Obviously, this all came from Moscow. Roz and I we did not write about the history. We wrote about dissent in the Jewish community. That was the article. We, and I mean all of the United Jewish People's Order, got kicked out of the Canadian Jewish Congress in the 1950s. And you know what, I actually found from their archives, this was a pretty weird violation of their own rules of how to proceed. You know, I have to say, and to our honor, the editor of Winnipeg's Yiddish Wort, who is Nachman Zelchin, he was a labor Zionist, but he actually opposed the expulsion because he had this completely crazy argument that maybe a Congress should include everybody in the community, including those you may not agree with. Well, okay, we did come back into the fold in 1995, but of course a few years later, Congress itself was disbanded with CIJA, the Committee for Israeli and Jewish Affairs, taking its place. That's a bit of a problem in terms of representing the Jewish community. But of course, in those years, I mean, I didn't know about this stuff about the honeymoon, but you know, the right kind of association, in other words, making sure kosher meant non-communist was the focus, rather than a concern with the issues facing the community at the time. And you know, I look at the agenda of the Jewish left. What we worried about: civil liberties, denazification, German rearmament, use of nuclear weapons. All of these were I mean, remember the padlock law? I don't personally remember, but the padlock law in Quebec. I mean, all of these were the issues of the left and dismissed because, of course, they were supported by the left. Okay. For sure, until 1956, the positions of the United Jewish People's Order were pro-Soviet, and you know, balancing our commitment of where we come from, the Yiddishkeit, with our socialist internationalist politics was always pretty tricky. But you know what? I love how Roz herself explained the difference between actually being a communist and being progressive. And actually, and we were called commies, but actually 95% of the membership were actually had ever even been a party member. So here's what Roz says. She said, I think it was a very subtle kind of connection. I was never a party person, but the kind of programs we had, the worldview that was presented to us, equality, social justice, socialism, a new world order, we became so imbued with it and accepted it. They didn't have to be a directive from higher up. And of course, when it came to politics or elections, there was no doubt of who you're going to support. Joe Zukin, of course. Everyone was out working for him. simply because there was no one else like him. It wasn't only the left that supported him either. There was an integrity there and an honesty that you just didn't find in others. In the paper that we wrote together, we argued that different voices and dissent actually make for a healthier, a more vibrant community. So, to go back to where I started from, Roz lived a life that was broad, that was generous, that was inclusive. That's how she lived. She lived her politics and, as has been mentioned, literally cooked her many commitments. I used to, when I used to come and visit, I used to wonder and really laugh at some of her very unexpected boyfriends, her visitors, to be found at her table. And we don't have to go about her amazing cooking abilities, but there were a rabbi, major figures in the mainstream Jewish community, people she studied with, people she worked with, academics, her old friends, her multi-generational family, and she, of course, treasured every one of you guys, along with her new friends of all ages. You know what, I mean, it is a wonder how she found the time, the energy to love us all, and boy, did we ever love her back. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther, for letting us hear Roz's voice in a different manner. Nolan brought us Roz's voice, and you brought us Roz's voice as well. Now, I had said at the beginning that we're going to try to keep this one to 90 minutes, and we're getting on in that direction. This is the time for some particularly close friends and associates to share memories with us. Stan Carbone there has a microphone that he will trot around, and we'll get a few people before we adjourn to the foyer, to the lobby, to talk among ourselves and share some refreshments. Let me mention, though, so it doesn't get in the way later, that about future programs of the Jewish Heritage Center. November is Holocaust Education Month, and the Jewish Heritage Center will be presenting 4 programs, each on a Sunday afternoon. Please keep an eye on the Jewish Post, or better yet, look at our website, JHCWC, Jewish Heritage Center of Western Canada, jhcwc.org, for details. We also, in very early December, have Harriet Zaidman, who's a close friend of Roz's and is in the audience now, together with 2 other historical novelists, Carol Matus and Eva Wiseman, talking about what it's like to write historical novels for young people. That's in very early December. And let me not forget to thank the staff of the Jewish Heritage Center, Stan Carbone, Bill Jarniewski, Andrew Morrison, as well as the technical experts here tonight, Jerry Augustin, Greg Mardero, Kim Moore, and Kent Davies, who made tonight's program possible. Now, Stan, perhaps there's somebody who, perhaps you'd find someone who'd like to tell us some more about Roz.
My name is Ruth, and I wanted to mention the Manitoba Multicultural Resource Center, MMRC, which I didn't hear other people mention, but that was a group which I believe Roz founded and organized, and it was to bring together people of different multicultural ethnic backgrounds to talk about heritage in Manitoba and to share common values and to educate the public, I think, about our multicultural history. And I worked, first of all, for Roz and her group as an assistant. And then later they put together Multicultural History of Manitoba, which was a museum exhibit that they coordinated with the Manitoba Museum, and worked with the curator there, Steve Pristupa, who was very knowledgeable, also working with 40 different ethnic groups. And they collected photographs. The main focus of the exhibit was black and white photos that the different groups provided. And I think it was a pretty successful museum exhibit. And I certainly learned a lot about it because most of my focus was on Winnipeg or Manitoba politics and history with Indigenous people. And so that was certainly an education for me, and I really appreciated that Roz had that broad perspective that was actually way beyond the Jewish community and included just about everybody in Manitoba. So I thank her for that.
Thank you for adding that important element.
Hi, I'm Ellen Karlinski, and I just want to, I can hear Roz saying, say something about Uchpo. Tell people they could join. Give them the website. So, uchpowinnipeg.com, and Roz was a mentor to all of us, and I wish she was still here. There's so many times I was like, oh, I need to talk to Roz. But we're a small group, but I think that we represent the kinds of values that you heard Roz embodied, and yeah, so get involved with us if that interests you. Thanks.
Hi, Itai Zutra. I teach Yiddish and Jewish studies at the University of Manitoba. And I'm also in charge of one of Roz's projects that was mentioned here, the Yiddish Reading Group at the Gwen sector. So if Ellen already advertised the UCHPO, I would like to invite everyone to attend our meetings every Friday, first Friday of the month at 12 o'clock at the Gwen sector. We meet and we read Yiddish literature by women. And every time I go to these meetings and I hear Roz, who was, after moving to Winnipeg 10 years ago, she became one of my mentors. I always hear, so what is this good for? Every time I read and I am excited about and passionate about the work of art, of Yiddish literature, from its poetic and aesthetic values, she always asks me, so why is this good? And always challenged me to think, and she was in a way a moral compass, I think, to many people in this community and beyond. And she will be missed. Every time I think about what would she say, she used to invite me to her apartment for lunch, and always took an interest in me and my life and my opinions. And I always kind of want to know, even from the other world, if she has anything new and exciting to tell us. So and just another comment to conclude, we were talking about her archive. She gave me the archive of the Yiddish Reading Group. I have it in my house. I moved recently and I kept the good it's in good condition, and I'm willing to donate it also to the Historical Society. If you want, it's not very big, but it's very, I think, important. It has all the readings, everything that the group did, reading Yiddish literature by women and translating it into English, and I think it's going to be worth your time.
I just want to add a little comment about Roz's importance to Yiddishkeit. She at one point, together with some people, went over to the then Soviet Union and took a number of books in the Yiddish language. and she found that was a very important part to do.
Hi, my name's Norman Rosenbaum. I'm beside my mother, Dora. Dora and Roz were very close. And I'd just like to say that Roz was an important part of my childhood. And in terms of ethical and moral education by example, I think Roz has touched everybody in this room.
Perhaps we've thought and talked and listened enough. So if that's it, I will thank you. Sorry, is there someone here? I missed.
As some of you may know, my mom not only worked with the Jewish community, but she's worked also with the Ukrainian Workers' Benevolence Association. She was the director of the Huzavik Children's Camp, which we all went to, and was very involved with Huzavik. I remember all the pierogi eating contests that we had. And so a friend of ours in Saskatchewan, his name is Don Kosick. He's from the Ukrainian progressive community in Saskatchewan, and he's been working many years in international development in Africa and the Pacific and trade unions and community organizing. And this year he won the Order of Canada for his lifelong work. So when I told him about today, he wrote me an email, and so I would like to just read that. I would like to pass on my deep respect for Roz's enduring commitment to peace and justice at home and internationally. Coming from a family who lived in North Winnipeg, I know of Roz's important work in connecting people in solidarity to build a progressive society. So I just wanted to share that email with you.
This is just a follow-up comment, but Roz talked about just about everything you've discussed here tonight. The Multicultural Resources Center, the Jewish Heritage Center, the move for that from downtown to here, the sort of debates and discussions about that. There's a lot more on UJPO in the interviews, and they're really, I think you'll find them very interesting to go and to listen to her.
Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you participants and arrangers for having set up this very important program to remind us, not that we really need a reminder, but to refresh our memories and give us more to think of. So I'll see you in the foyer. Thanks for coming.